It's exciting to see so many applications of metamaterials emerging.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your enlightening lecture. So how do you envision metamaterials evolving in the next decade?
Well, there are two directions. One, I've indicated that there are already many products on the market, and I think that market will grow. At least people who know about markets tell me that that market will grow. Certainly a demand for materials that go beyond what we have at the moment. But that would leave me marooned with a sea going away from it, because I work at the fundamental end of things, and things do flow away from the fundamental things. So what are we doing at the fundamental side? And I alluded to it in my last slide, but I mistimed my talk, so I didn't explain it properly. We're looking at systems which change in time very, very rapidly, on the same sort of time scale as light vibrates, which is very, very short indeed. It's a huge experimental challenge, more than theoretically, but we're tackling it in London, trying to solve that problem. A lot of things will emerge from that, I think.
Great. So when constructing a theory, do you consider its feasibility and even potential influence on future developments?
Invisibility is sort of a grand challenge. So the idea about that is, if you can make something invisible, you surprise people, and then they take interest. I mean, if you merely write a learned paper which says, this theorem and that, people say, stand page. But if you sit up, take notice, then that gets people's attention. I gave a lecture to DARPA, which is the American research agency, and Val Browning, who was the controller there, she said, "John, your job is to ginger things up." Okay, so I gave a very straight-faced lecture with the equations and the theory and so on and so forth. And then at the end I said, by the way, you could make things invisible. And this was full of officers from the Air Force. I think, what? That made them sit up. And not only that audience, but the other audience did. And that was the function of the cloak. If you can do this, you can do a lot of other things as well. And I think that's one of the things that propelled it to people's attention. Of course, having done that, if they then look at it and say, oh, this doesn't do anything useful for me, then it goes down again. But it hasn't. It's gone up, at least for the past 20 years.
What has been the most surprising finding in your research on metamaterials?
I think the most surprising one was, for somebody who's not a scientist, the cloak is surprising, okay, but to a scientist, it's merely interesting, let's say. What was surprising was that you could break this law of Abbe, that you could design a lens that, in theory, and partly in practice, could resolve things smaller than the wavelength of light. And that produced an absolute uproar in the classical optical community. And on that wet, rainy Sunday morning, after I'd proved my theorem, I went to lunch with my wife and I said, darling, I'm going to be either famous or infamous. It turned out I was both.
You're still actively publishing research papers. And how do you keep yourself motivated and continue learning?
As I said at the beginning about my childhood, something within me makes me fascinated with how things work. And that's stayed. The other things about me decay, like hair falling out or whatever. But that passion is still there.
Great.
And I still pursue it.
Your passion is still there. Great. And how do you keep yourself motivated?
I don't need to.
You don't need to, so that you don't need to.
The passion is there.
Always there.
Yes.
Wow. So reflecting on your career, is there a special moment that stands out as meaningful?
I don't think so, not in my scientific career. Here we've been mainly talking about my science and so on, and there have been many moments which I could reminisce about and have. But the really significant moments in your life are things like meeting your wife and getting married, aren't they? At the end of the day, those are, yes.
So sweet.
So that, yes, if you ask me a significant moment, meeting my wife.
Oh, wow. So sweet. So she's there?
Sadly not. She hurt her leg just before we came, so we had to cancel. So she's not here. But I have many friends in the audience, I hope.
Yeah. So on a personal note, are there any hobbies or activities you enjoy that help you unwind from your research?
Yes, I think it's very important to have a wider perspective on life generally. Otherwise, it somehow constrains your capacity to invent. So I have several hobbies. I mentioned I try to play the piano. I enjoy that very much. I've bought a lovely piano, or my wife bought me a lovely piano recently, a Steinway. I love photography. I have just bought the Nikon Z7, and you saw some butterflies earlier. Next summer, I'm going to be out photographing more butterflies. And then there's my garden, of course. You saw me tending my plants lovingly with the watering. So those are the things I relax with, yes.
Oh, wow. You have so many activities and hobbies. Do you have any favorite piano composers?
Yes, most of them. At the moment, I'm working on some Schumann.
Schumann.
And I like Chopin very much, but most of his stuff is too difficult for me. When I want to have music I can concentrate on how it sounds rather than how difficult it is to play, I turn to Grieg, and he has some set of pieces he wrote called lyric pieces, and they're very, very beautiful, very beautiful.
Wow, sounds great. Could you give some advice to young scientists, especially those who want to make a significant impact within their field?
Yes, well, that's a difficult question because I've heard it asked of very distinguished people, and what they've usually said is ignore everybody else, have your own ideas, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that's wrong. If I was advising a young person, I would say it's a very good idea to find a mentor.
Mentor. Somebody
will help you, give you advice when you don't see the way ahead, and introduce you to other people, help your career along. And the choice of mentor is very important. Don't pick the smartest person in the room. They're probably quite obsessed with themselves. Pick somebody who's wise. And that's different from being clever. So that's one thing. And then, after you listened to other people and heard what they have to say, made your friends in the community, found an area which is good to work on, then you can say, what is it? In what way am I going to change the world? But first you have to learn and listen to others. And that's a strong message in science. You cannot ignore what others do. Newton said, when asked how he'd succeeded so much, he said, it is because I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's the way we work.
Wow, that sounds great. In the video, you described your younger self as a dangerous little child. And are you still dangerous in some way?
I hope not, because I'd be arrested if I was. we used to, I mentioned we made fireworks, and in those days, I could go out of my granny's store and go down to the marketplace, and in the gardening shop there, you could buy flies of sulfur, potassium nitrate, charcoal. Grind them up together, gunpowder.
Wow.
You could always also buy ammonium nitrate, which is a favorite ingredient of terrorist bombs. If you want to make, if you can get hold of ammonium nitrate, which you can't very easily these days, they add diesel fuel to it, and it's a horrible, horrible bomb. So no, I don't do that, because I think even if I wanted to, it would not be very popular with the police.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sir John Pendry.
Yeah.